Good afternoon, everybody. This is January 22nd, 2025. This is the Finance Committee. It is about 5:03. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. And the first item on our agenda is the minutes of our last meeting, which was December 19th. And I believe all of us were here. But first, I want to say thank you to everybody for being flexible. As most of you are aware, our meeting was originally scheduled for tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and Rich and Jackie are involved with a conference, and so we had to change it to today. And while I'm talking about that, our next meeting was originally scheduled for next Thursday at 4 o'clock. And there is a workshop, a budget workshop at the Nauset Regional High School on educational issues. And Peter and I believe Rich and Jackie are going, and I'm not sure whether anybody from the select board.
Probably not.
I'm not sure. Anyway, we weren't aware of that originally, so the meeting that we had hoped to have, the Finance Committee meeting that we had hoped to have next Thursday will be changed to next Wednesday. And that's the 29th at 5 o'clock. So I want to make sure that, I want to thank you all for being able to come for the quorum today. And I just wanted to ask whether there's anybody that thinks they might not be able to come for the meeting next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Are you saying you can or you can't?
I don't know if I'll make it. I'll have a meeting at 2 o'clock in Boston.
Oh, okay. What about the Zoom? What about the Zoomers for next Wednesday, the 29th at 5 o'clock?
Okay.
Okay, 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 so,
It's fine, Mary.
okay, thanks, Paul. So that's everybody, so, okay, so we have a quorum. I just wanted, we had to set up room and all that stuff, and I didn't want to do that if we didn't have a quorum, so thank you, everybody, for that. So minutes of December 19th, 2024, we were all present. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of December 19th, 2024?
I move approval of the minutes of
Roy?
December 19th.
Right? Do I have a second?
Second.
Patty? Is there any discussion? All in favor? Roy?
Aye.
All 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9-0. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the presentation that we attended with the on the fiscal year 2026. And I didn't know how you wanted to proceed with that, whether I'd ask people if they had questions or.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, it's a joint meeting. Sometimes it's hard. This is your meeting, so it's a good opportunity if you have any questions on any of that presentation. Before, basically, we like to do that overview summary presentation, and then that leads into getting into the weeds and the details at your weekly meetings going forward. But that kind of encompasses the whole picture. The one thing that will change from that I need to contemplate how we're going to resolve, and I think that Paul was talking to some of the select board, is if they are committed to moving forward to an RTE, I kind of need to know at what level they're thinking, because that does have a impact on our overlay account. And we can talk about that now or maybe later, depending once we get through some of the details of tonight's agenda. But it is impactful and we need to provide for it. And so, we could ask them to raise the money by our property taxes. We could ask them to, we have some free cash, so we can ask them to use free cash. That'd be the type of thing that maybe we use free cash for, because the first year impact isn't as great as the annually recurring impact. The impact reduces after a year and definitely after the second year. So, free cash might be a stopgap for that. But if they use free cash for that, then we'll probably have to not do something else that we had put free cash up for. So there's a trade-off to that. So I think that's the major thing that's different from that summary presentation that we'll have to consider between now and hopefully within a month. I've sorted. And Paul had a question.
What was your?
I do, Rich. Just a general question overall. When we're going through the salaries, I don't begrudge anybody a raise. I'm just trying to figure out how is it determined? because the percentages are all over the map.
Yep. Most of our employees are participants in a collective bargaining arrangement. They're part of a union, and we negotiated with that union. This is the third year of the collective bargaining agreement for each of our unions. So in that, they get a cost of living adjustment, and they are different between unions. I think largely they're 2.5%, and maybe one case 3%. But in addition to that, each employee gets a step, well, may or may not get a step increase depending on where you are in the schedule. If you normally have a step increase, say public safety, I think those step increases are now either 3 or 3.5%, which was down from our prior agreement, which was 5.5%. So that's one of the things that we got back through this past round. But if you're at your top step, there's no more steps to go, so you might not get a step increase. So that might be explain some variance that you're seeing, that some people, if you got your COLA of 2.5 and a step increase of 3, that's a 5.5% increase for most people. But if you're at the top step, you're only going to get the COLA, the 2.5%. And then what's left after that is employees that are in our personnel code, which, just so everybody knows, pretty much mirrors our East Hampton Employees Association union. So the pay scales are aligned in that. But we do have some employees. One of the things that we implemented several years ago to attract employees was what I call an open merit plan. So some people aren't on the step basis. They've elected to be getting raises based on merit, and they're subject to an annual review. And the benefit of that to them is perhaps they can get more than just the step increase. They might, because of good performance. And it also opens up a little bit higher on the top end of the range as well. And that's important for a lot of our department heads because it's competitive. And the best folks that we get usually are transfers from elsewhere that have experience, and we can fit into our open merit range.
They still get the COLA though,
They get a COLA, right?
in addition.
A COLA.
Either way,
Instead of a step, they get an evaluation that gives you a merit increase.
they get the COLA increase on top, in addition,
Yes.
everybody gets that. Right.
Correct.
Okay, and then for those people, the raises are determined by their boss?
Yeah, approved by me, approved by Jackie.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question, Rich. How many steps are there? And are there the same number of steps for everybody? It
No.
depends upon the contract.
It's the same for everybody within the union, but the
Yeah, right, right,
union
right.
to union could be different.
Right, right. So one union could be 10, another could be.
Yeah, our
Something
personnel
else.
code and our EEA are the more typical ones that you find with 10 steps.
Mhm.
And we are 2.5% between steps.
Mhm.
So that gives you a 25% range from low to high.
Aye.
Rich,
Roy?
do Massachusetts employees get longevity increases?
It's subject to bargaining.
Mhm.
They can. And each of our unions do have longevity provisions. So that's another reason why you might see, small percentages of differences between people that are in the same step or grade in our schedule. But somebody might have, well, I guess it wouldn't be in the same step, but the percentage of their increase in their step would be the same. But they might qualify for longevity, therefore their percentage increase might be a little bit higher than somebody that doesn't get longevity.
And how many years of employment are required to for
That's-
longevity?
Different for each union, but generally it's about 7 for us here. Most of our unions are 7, maybe 7 to 10 somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick request. For those of you in the conference room, when you are asking questions, would you please make sure the microphone is near you so that those of us on Zoom can hear what you're saying?
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a question, Steve? Yeah, Rich, on the RTE, the cost to the town, what was the number that you kicked out at the select board meeting?
Well, it depends on so the question is the cost of the RTE implementation.
Right.
So cost of adding stuff internally to do it, the biggest cost the first year is the impact to your overlay account. And perhaps I ought to take the opportunity now just to explain that a little bit. So, as part of our budget, we're required to have a balanced budget, right? So the way the state does that, it's pretty much cash basis. Our appropriations are cash basis approved by town meeting. That's what we're allowed to spend. You've got to balance that by having local receipts, which we're required to budget on a cash basis. And state receipts and our other funds that we can draw from are all cash basis. To make it all balance, you plug basically your tax levy. Whatever you need to keep that budget balanced has to be funded by your tax levy, which has to be under your levy limit. But that's the only thing in the whole array of numbers that's accrual. So if you're saying that I'm going to raise $35 million of property taxes, that's what you expect to bill. There are always instances that somebody comes in, you send out the $35 million of bills, say somebody gets a $10,000 bill. They come in and say, there's no way my property should be worth this much amount of money. I don't owe $10,000. I only owe, it should be X. Assessors go through it. They process an abatement. The Board of Assessors approves that abatement and the change in value. And now we have to pay someone a $500 refund. So that $500 needs to be paid from somewhere because we relied on, what did I use, $35 million. And now we're only getting $34,999,500. So we got to keep, it has to be funded for somewhere. So part of our expenditure budget, and it's in the budget summary in the presentation I showed you last time, as the account for overlay, provision for abatements and exemptions, our overlay account. So every year we put about $250,000 into the overlay account to pay for abatements. It also pays for exemptions. So we have elderly exemptions, we have veterans exemptions, we have people that are blind, they get blind person's exemptions. And those exemptions get funded and paid out of that overlay account.
Does it also pay for people who don't pay their taxes?
What's that?
People who don't pay their taxes?
No, everybody pays their taxes, Fred.
You saying that with a straight face?
Well, we
That's
know they
it's the
don't.
one
We
thing
have
that we
the
can
information.
lean. The answer
No,
is,
but you can lean it, but you don't have the cash in your.
right.
Right, right.
Yeah. So is that overlay
So-
cover those people who don't pay on time or?
Not really. It represents a funding shortfall. And in our case, and this is if you recall back to our year-end financial review for June 30th, on the property tax page, I showed how much was billed for the levy and how much was collected against that levy. It's always going to be short because, people don't pay, right? You've leaned them and you're going to collect it. But then right below that, typically I'm going to show the amount of taxes from the prior year that were collected in this year. And so it just kind of keeps rolling. So the extent that people don't pay this year, it's made up by the people that did pay from the last year. So you're right that the overlay does kind of cover that.
Yeah.
But it also, we do eventually collect our money. But it is impactful in a severe economic situation, right? So if you're always going to have people that don't pay, and normally it's about the same. But if if it's real tough times, we could see a huge increase of people not paying. And then that would be impactful because of cash flow, right? But the overlay does protect us against that to some extent.
Is there anybody that didn't get at the meeting, the joint meeting where we were talking about the RTE? Well, it wasn't joint that time. I have that thing that you
Yeah, but
passed
if you can
out.
take-
Did everybody here get one? I didn't know whether yeah, okay, I just wanted to,
I understand the whole thing, but.
So I got
You have an extra one?
yes.
I'll take it.
I got a little off track
It's
there
not-
on the
it's not-
overlay. But the
It's
point,
not colored, but anybody else?
but the reason we might need more overlay, assuming that what we normally provide for is what you need, there is extra in there, but let's just start from things that are new. The RTE would be new. So the challenge we face in implementing an RTE is people have to apply and we have to validate that they're residents and we got to approve their application. And when we do that, we put that exemption shows up on their tax bill because we know it before the tax bill is going out. So whatever the value of all the applications we receive are, let's say it's $5 million out of the $35 million levy. We take the $5 million of exemptions that we know and we shift it to the ineligibles and raise $5 million more from them. So our bills that are going out, still total 35 million. The problem comes, the people that deserve or eligible for the RTE,
But don't,
but didn't apply or get their application approved before the bills went out. They come in after the bill. So now I can't give them money or a reduction of their tax bill because I can't offset it to anybody else. I can't add it to anybody else's bill once those bills are gone out. So only way to accommodate that is to charge it to that overlay account.
And the state requires you to give it to them if they come in at you.
Oh, absolutely.
Come in after the
Yep. Up to
application.
April 1st of the following year. So the experience, we did a lot of survey of towns that have implemented this, especially the ones that did it recently. So Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, Tisbear. And the best anybody did was 63% compliance in the first year. So most people weren't that. So I use 60% as an estimate of our 2,500. And these are towns that have far fewer than we would have.
Mm.
You know, Wellfleet and Truro. No, the Wellfleet's the biggest. I think we're 4 times as many applications that we'd have to process in Wellfleet.
Did they give you an idea of how many people applied late, like after the tax bill went
Yeah,
out?
40%.
40
Yeah, so 60% of the people
that are eligible.
is our
that are-
estimate of the people that are eligible will get it in before the tax bills, and 40% won't. So 40% of 2,500,
But did all of them come in the first? What I'm saying, so you're saying 60% knew about it and applied before the tax bill.
Mhm.
So that leaves 40% that didn't know about it. That 40% of that 40% left over, did they all come in a week later and
No.
say, I didn't know, like how many?
well,
did you get a
vast majority
sense-
of them will come in. We
Well, come
know
in,
the
still a
exact,
majority of that 40%.
we know from the other towns, the impact of the people, the dollar value of the impact of people that didn't come in before. They came in after.
Right, and
So it's 40% of the total people, because there's always people, and I'll just use our numbers, 2,500 people we think are eligible. And if that's a correct estimate, I'll just make up a number. Let's say 2,000, which would be a lot, come in early. It means 500 didn't. Well, of that 2,500, maybe only a total of 2,450 actually end up coming in. Right? But I can't
we don't know.
count on
Some
that.
people can't be bothered, some people don't care, some people don't need it, but every town's different, so. who
And
knows?
those people who don't apply, do they end up getting paid tax, even though they're eligible? And they don't apply, do they end up getting paid a higher rate in their taxes?
Yes. Everybody pays higher rate of taxes because the tax rate goes up.
Right.
But you're just getting an exemption on your tax bill to reduce it more than it went up. But if you
Right.
don't apply and don't get that exemption, you're just paying the higher amount.
And that's that, this line tax rate width, right?
Right. So the bottom of that chart shows at the different adoption percentages,
Mm.
the impact to the overlay. At 60 or 40% come in and after the fact. So at 5%, it's $200,000. The first year.
Yeah.
Something less the second year, and then ultimately probably year 3 and on, it's, $15,000-$20,000 a year. At that point, you've got everybody and you can process their applications, you send them to them and, get them in the door much quicker once everybody's used to it, but it's that implementation year and second year.
And we kind of have a small window too, the first
Right.
year.
Mhm.
Small what?
Window.
Window.
Between when the tax rate is set and the bills go out and people apply.
Mhm.
Not a long period of time.
No.
Well, Rich, was the original, when they put the RTE in originally, was it always, for some reason, I thought it wasn't always up to 35%. It was less, right?
Has gone up over the
And-
years.
and
I think
now-
it was
yeah.
originally 20 or
That's what
25.
I thought, yeah.
And now as a seasonal community, it can go all the way up to 50%.
That's 50%. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah, so that decision will be made in August?
No, I need to know the guidance
When,
now.
no, when is the percentage for our town going to be?
Everything's voted in August when they have their tax
That's what I
classification
thought,
hearing, but
yeah.
I need to know what their
Oh, yeah.
intention is,
I
now.
would, yeah,
So we can budget.
so is that scheduled, when is that scheduled to be decided on?
Get around to it.
What is she
Keep
asking?
nagging them.
You're gonna have to put it on the select board agendas.
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
next
yeah.
couple Meetings.
I mean, sooner rather than later,
Yeah, no, our
for
intent is-
implementation reasons.
My intent, we'll see how everything shakes out. We've got a little bit of time. But I wouldn't imagine getting started with the process anyway, much sooner than March 1st.
Mhm.
So if I have some indication by then, we'll adjust accordingly. And I'll give Colleen in the assessor's office some instruction and support. And we'll start advertising, developing the application, trying to get as many people as we can in the door.
Response. Yeah.
Is there some way to kind of phase in the exemption, or could the select board do that with a goal of, say, keep the typical resident bill kind of level? Let the increases in bills for non-residents take the increase in the levy over the couple years, as opposed to big difference right away. Residents see their bill go down in
Yeah,
fiscal 26, and then 2 years later, when wastewater comes in, they're all unhappy with everybody again.
right, because the impact is felt, once.
Mhm.
Hey, I saved $500 this year on my taxes, awesome. Well, next year, if
Gonna
everything
go up again.
goes, the rate of increase for every subsequent year is the same as it was going to be. And you're not getting the benefit of the saving of the $500, or, I mean, you will, but won't feel like it. So unless you bump up the percentage of the RTE. Honestly, we can't, I think I was pretty clear with the select board, but we have to flesh this out a little bit, but we can't off the rip afford a 35% RTE because it would cost over $1 million and a half bucks just in overlay. Maybe we could afford a 5% and maybe we could accommodate that. So I don't know if that's going to be how that they come, but if that were what they did, then the next year, then there's an opportunity to increase it. Because chances are no board or future board is going to decrease it. Then you could, do what you're talking about and kind of time the increases in the RT with increases in the tax levy because of wastewater.
If I'm understanding what you're saying about the, how the overlay account works, it sounds like there's some risk that we'll end up with a levy that's below our 2.5 limit.
No.
Sounds like to do the estimate, you'll have to, or do when you set the rate, you're gonna have to do some estimate of how many people will ultimately how many residents will ultimately apply.
Right.
And so if we do that, then if more come in later, we'd have to have we may have to set aside more in an overlay.
Yes.
And I don't know, I guess I'm a little confused about how that might work in practice. It sounds like you're thinking you wouldn't have a risk of ultimately raising less than the total levy.
Well, we wouldn't raise less if we used property taxes to fund the additional overlay. Then we'd need to either cut some other expenses to make room and then provide for that, or all things being equal, we'd have to get an override to fund it. Chances are we're not doing that approach. Alternatively, we don't need to use property tax because it's hopefully a 1-year thing. So maybe we could use free cash, which doesn't affect our tax levy, and put that into the overlay.
One more question. So why isn't RTE an item that goes to the town meeting?
It's legality. It's one of the exemptions the select board has the power to make under state law.
One of the powers that the select board has.
They have 4 exemptions, statutory exemptions that they get to approve each year at the tax classification hearing when they set the tax rate.
Thank you.
The other ones.
I knew you were gonna ask me. Small business exemption,
Commercial versus.
commercial,
Commercial versus residential.
no, I forget the other one. Open space exemption, which we don't have, so.
Oh, open space is taxed at a different rate.
Yeah.
Oh, the rates, the commercial versus the residential. No.
So if the select board decided on 35% RTE, we'd need an override.
Yeah, there's no way with what we've got to, unless we cut lots of other things. I mean, we could do anything,
Well, how
Yeah.
much is that? $1 million?
1,000,005.
$1,000,005.
Yeah, we'd have
Where,
to
where's
not
the
do
break
capital
point
and put free
on
cash
this?
there.
Where you need an override, do you know?
What's that?
Where's the break point on?
That's what I was leaving.
Yeah, I know who you
Well,
go.
we have, we do have some excess levy capacity. My presentation shows, I think, like 40-something thousand. But that's gonna
I thought
go,
there was 43,000.
but that's gonna go as we finalize the budget numbers. So we essentially have no excess levy capacity. So anything more we want to do over what we presented, it's either rearranging those numbers from here to here or getting an override to fund the extra.
And my guess is they would obviously choose to rearrange. So they'd take, instead of putting money into the wastewater stabilization fund, it would go into the overlay until we knew what was going on or something like that. Instead of doing capital, it would go into the overlay. I'm assuming that's what they would choose to do.
And you can still apply for the residential tax exemption, but the tax assistance in addition to getting.
Well, that's a program that they have that currently isn't funded. The budget presentation I presented prior to the RTE being back on the table had 50,000 of free cash going to the resident taxpayer assistance fund.
Mhm.
So I think they're still enthusiastic about doing that, but if they got to come up with money for something else, maybe that's one of the things that you consider.
Nice.
Last question on the steps. Is are the steps sort of 1 year apart?
Yes,
Eligible for a step every year? For 10
not
years?
every year. In our standard schedule of 10 steps, yes, it's an annual. Some,
Oh, but some have
police-
more than a year.
I think police and fire only have 5 steps. I
They have
forget.
2 years.
We just, no, that changed.
Oh, you changed that. Yeah.
It's off the top of my head, but I think they have 5 and we might have expanded an extra year to accommodate a little higher range.
But in general, they're probably through their steps after 10 years.
Yes, for sure.
And then they're not stuck, but they're down to COLA. And some of them would have longevity.
Yes.
Well, every 3 years when we do the contracts, we do, reclassifications too.
Mhm.
So there's opportunities
To, yeah,
to adjust.
to adjust, yeah,
wages If the job has changed.
change, right, yeah. I don't see Kate, so I'm assuming that she has left because I don't see her any.
I'm actually here.
Oh,
I'm getting
oh.
a message that I can't turn on my video camera. I
Well, let
tried
me,
to reach Devin. I don't know why the camera stopped working.
Try again. I just changed the setting.
Try again, Kate. Well, there you
Here we
go. Yeah, yeah.
It just stopped working. Thank
Yeah, I disabled some of the controls so we don't get spammed with some.
Oh,
something
okay.
inappropriate.
I'm not spamming you.
Nor are you inappropriate.
Well, I'm glad we figured that out because I had you down as leaving. That's good.
No, I've been here the whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah, that's good. Terrific. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on the RTE? Actually, it was listed at the end of the agenda, but we've been discussing it under the fiscal year 26 budget. If there are no other questions, I'm going to go down to the departmental budgets. And the first one,
Hey, Mary,
yes, Roy?
may I ask a question on the general fund budget?
Sure.
Just on revenue, the decrease in local receipts for the coming fiscal year, is that due to the loss of value in vehicles, Rich?
No. So the local receipts that Roy is referring to is on, if you look at this page called funding local receipts in the presentation.
Mhm.
The subtotal before state aid is 5,726,100 for last year, this fiscal year 25. And for FY 26 budget, we've got 5,668,844. So it's a decrease. But the biggest change of that, if you look 4 rows from the top, under short-term rental excise.
1.1.7 versus 1.1.
1,160,000 last year versus
I mean-
988,744 this year.
Right, right.
And that's because, as I've explained a couple times, and probably have to explain a few more times because it's a bit confusing. But it's been our strategy for wastewater funding. What I'm trying to do by decreasing the use of that short-term rental tax is to step it back from what it started out at 1.16 or 1.7 at one point. As its highest point, or that was the actual. Yeah, 1.160 was the highest point. So from this point forward, the strategy is to step that back each year to the extent our exempt debt drops off. Because we're always able to raise exempt debt as an addition to a levy outside of our property tax limit. So if that debt drops off, the next year our ability to raise that extra revenue also drops off. But the way I can capture it is by stepping back that short-term rental excise. And that is adding to the tax levy for this year, perhaps more than we need to. But what we're trying to do, in a perfect world, if everything else were equal, the tax levy would be perfectly equal too, because the extent the debt expense dropped off, the revenue dropped off the same amount. And what I'm trying to do is this will go down to a very small amount of money in about 4 years. And then when we bring on the debt for wastewater, and that's a big expense that's hitting in year 5, then we ramp that line item right back up to the 1.5 million to offset when that debt comes on. So it's a conditioning.
Okay. Could you give me an example of exempt debt?
Yeah, well, all of our debt at this point, for the most part, is exempt debt. So we did, it doesn't matter what it is, any project, our wastewater planning, water. If we issue a $10 million bond, and that bond has debt service of $450,000, and say it's new this year, our tax levy doesn't increase enough for us to accommodate an additional $450,000. And it doesn't need to, because whatever our tax levy, maximum levy is calculated under the law, we're able to add that 450,000 to that maximum, that levy to have a higher limit because of the debt. But you're only able to do it when you have debt service. So you can't, once that debt goes away and you no longer have to pay it, you're not able to raise that revenue any longer.
Right.
Whereas a general override, if you go for an override for $1 million like we did last year for schools and police, or $1.5 million just about, that gets to our tax levy. And it adds to our maximum levy and stays there unless there is an underride voted and takes it away. So the debt, exempt debt increases your levy only when you've got the debt and eventually goes away as the debt's paid off, whereas the general override stays.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, folks, we will go on to our agenda, and it's, as I mentioned, it's the departmental budget meetings. And the first item is 4A, elected and general, and that's on pages 41 through 45.
So I have a couple new things in the budgets, and I'm not going to really go into it too much. You'll see throughout all these that there's nothing. I added a departmental summary page. It's a new thing this year, and I provide some instructions to departments about it. So over the next couple years, we're going to develop that, and so I just wanted to show it so that hopefully next year we'll start filling those out and have a little bit more information in that. I also added personnel summary information, so you can see the changes in positions over the years. But this budget is very simple. It hasn't changed. It comprises 2 things: the stipend for the select board of $13,000, and the reserve fund of $200,000. That's it, $213,000. No changes from the prior year. No increase.
And I have a question, and I mentioned it to you the other day, Rich. The 200,000 Finance Committee reserve. Last year, we spent about 70,000 of that. What exactly are our abilities to use those monies if we end up in the year with monies left over? I mean, other than obviously going into free cash. Does the Finance Committee have any options?
To use that money?
Mm.
No. It's the rule under reserve fund of the law is can be used with your approval, the vote of the Finance Committee,
Mhm.
for any expense that's considered extraordinary or unforeseen of the budget process. So generally, the reason it was so lightly used, so to speak, last year,
There's the transfers were,
we used some year-end transfers, we used another procedure, but also we did not have a big year of snow and ice. And so typically we have a deficit in snow and ice because we don't budget a lot.
Mhm.
And we'll get into that when we
Yeah.
look at snow and ice in a future meeting, but the rule of snow and ice is once you appropriate a certain amount, it's the only account the state requires you to maintain that level of spending. So I would never want to budget a lot of extra money for snow and ice and not being able to repurpose it for other lines if we so choose. So generally, that's pretty common that most towns have under budgeted snow and ice accounts. They usually get a deficit
Mhm.
and then we cover it with other appropriation savings or we get a reserve fund transfer. So last year we very minimal snow and
very, yeah,
ice.
right.
I don't think any actually. And so we didn't have hit the reserve fund for
I
that.
don't think there was a transfer for snow and ice last year. I mean, I
Last
have
year,
the information
And
here.
probably this year, definitely this year on the new bill that we got for weights and measures from the states.
Mm.
That's gonna be a reserve fund transfer for this year because it wasn't budgeted for this year. We had that last year. And transfer station last year.
The tipping fees, I
Yeah.
think.
And so I would imagine that might be an issue this year as well.
Mhm.
But we'll have to see because we're doing a better job with DPW on budgeting that. We've actually pegged a specific tonnage. So we're gonna work with them that they'll monitor the tonnage that they're shipping, because we know the contract, we know the rates. The challenge usually is if I'm budgeting for 3,000 tons to be hauled and dropped, I gotta pay for the hauling, I gotta pay for the disposal. That's great, but if it actually is 3,200 tons, then we're gonna be short. And now we're gonna know exactly why. The good news is if you have 3,200 tons, we also likely have additional revenue from C&D disposal.
Mhm.
So that's typically the reason. And so we always feel a little bit better making a transfer, knowing that the money's in the revenue account, but you can't fund expenses from revenues. You gotta,
Yep.
from a voted appropriation, so.
The
use it as a
the reason
wash.
I asked that question, and I asked Rich that earlier, was we've had discussions of being able to put monies into the community fund. And I was wondering whether if there were monies left over in the reserve, whether those monies could be moved by the Finance Committee into the community fund.
I wouldn't think it would qualify as,
Yeah, yeah, and that
extraordinary
was
unforeseen.
something I was thinking about. 'Cause
one of the
otherwise-
questions we got at town meeting last year was, geez, 200,000 seems like a lot. And it's not when you consider that we gotta cover snow and ice
Mhm.
and transfer station's a big one. Those two things alone, I think, warrant it. But 200,000 on our budget is, just the operating budget, not the capital,
Right.
is, 0.4%, not even half of 1%. Most towns are about half to 1%.
Oh, we've been at 200 for a couple of years now. I remember a number of years before that was 125 and,
100.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So we can whip through that one quick unless there's any more questions on elected in general. It's an
Uh,
easy one. Dipping your toes into the
Shouldn't be a
water.
big one.
Let me see. Let me see, yeah. Okay, our next item on the agenda is 4B, that's the town administration. And that's pages 47 through 56.
Yeah, Wayne or Devin, if you can bring that up.
I'm sorry?
Just talking to Wayne.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Oh, I'm sorry.
The town administration budget, which will be up in a second. Or actually, I can share the screen myself, guys. You don't need to do it. Got it.
Change much.
There's not a lot of change here. This page shows the summary. So, the biggest change you're gonna see here is salaries. Up 6.3. I can't quite make out the numbers, so if I'm off a little bit, I apologize.
Me.
And that's, collective, bargaining agreements. And Jackie's not collectively bargained, but that's her contracted salary. And temporary, seasonal temporary salaries is used for right word.
Oh, yeah.
Interim work that might need to be done. She has the ability to hire someone on a short-term basis to accomplish that something.
If we have someone out sick or
I'm sorry, what?
if we have someone out sick or
Oh,
I
oh.
need to backfill something for a minute.
That's the 12.5? I have a question. And it's my understanding that you have informed this select board that you have decided on your retirement plans. That's what I understand.
We have not made a formal announcement.
Oh,
No.
okay, okay. Because my question was going to be, if that was the case, that there would have to be some overlap monies in there to cover some time period when a decision was made to hire somebody new.
I don't have any, at this point, the budget doesn't reflect any
And I
impact
see
to
that.
FY
Yeah,
26,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
think we're okay. And if and when that happens, we have some things we can utilize to cover whatever we need to cover, so.
An overlap of somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's the salaries. It's just 3 people. You see the salary schedule there.
Mhm.
It's, the town manager, it's the executive assistant to the town manager, and Shayna Brogan is our project and procurement manager that works directly with Jackie on a bunch of projects. The other costs are the expense side. So we've broken that, the town administrator's expense lines, legal services, and central purchasing. We do try to put a lot of the central purchasing. If you can go to the next page, guys, under the town administration expense. Yep, another page. Keep going. There you go.
There we go. Mhm.
So this, the one item here that's not for specific things is consulting support. There's $40,000 if there's some sort of outside consultant that was needed for whatever reason. Investigations, engineering, audits, you name it, special projects. Typically, that is utilized to some extent, some years more than others. The other accounts are travel and conference and dues and memberships pretty much get utilized each year. If you go to the next page, that's the total. The legal services budget, back one page, please. There you go. It's just one line item. It's a provision for money that we use for town council. We have to have amounts on hand in the event that we need to utilize town council. We are pretty judicious about our need to use town council. A lot of things we have knowledge and expertise or confidence in-house to handle. But if we have HR type matter, lawsuit type thing against the town or
I'm not sure, excuse me, I'm not sure where you are,
Page 54.
what page are you?
legal service.
I'm sorry?
54.
Oh, I have 54.
Mary, it's page 54.
Thank you, Kate.
Yep.
And sometimes we utilize them in negotiations as well.
And is that available for any department that needs legal assistance?
Yeah, but everything
Yes.
goes through the town manager's office.
I'm sorry?
Everything goes through the town manager's office,
Mhm.
so she manages the budget.
Mhm.
Got to make sure that you're in the loop of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But people are pretty good about it. I mean, we offer it to boards and committees if a chairman needs some advice, if
Mhm.
staff needs advice with a case or an issue, and
Mhm.
they use it very judiciously.
Mhm. I mean, I think we've asked for it with the CPA committee
Mhm.
on occasion.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, so that comes out of this rather than
Yes.
our own
Yes.
CPA monies.
Well, that depends.
Mm.
So sometimes, like, for instance, if it's a legal issue related to water, like legal easements, we had money in the capital fund for that task. So this isn't necessarily every legal bill of the town. If it can be, if the legal bill is related to a specific project, then we might bill it to that
That
specific
project.
project. And CPA, of course, you know, is special, so it
Mhm.
has there's some instances where I could imagine that we might ask CPA to pay for it instead.
I go back to salaries for a quick second.
Okay.
So Jackie's was by contract, which was negotiated.
Right.
About the other two. They were about 6% increase, but how do they get determined?
One of them is on the. No, they're both personnel code.
They're both personnel code. but
So they're
we-
subject to our personnel code, so they have a grade, which assigns a range, and then a step within that grade. And so,
That's
Wayne, can you go up to the, a few pages to the salary schedule, please?
Page 50.
Yeah, page 50.
One more. There you go.
There we go, yeah.
Okay, so I don't put it here, but in your budget book, most of you have here, the very end is the town-wide salary schedule. And that has a little bit more detail than this page shows. It shows which bargaining unit they're in, and it shows their grade, and it shows you their step.
Mhm.
So it's at the very back of your budget book, if you're so inclined to look at that. So you could look at any of these three people, and they'll be on that salary schedule, which shows you their step and their grade and their bargaining unit. What you see there, probably is some longevity coming into effect as well.
Dana's been.
Oh, yeah, the one.
That salary schedule that's at the back of your budget book would also indicate longevity people are getting, includes everything that's in that calculation. It's probably very small, but if you have an electronic copy, you can
I
blow
was
it
just
up.
gonna say, I need a magnifying glass.
The electronic copy definitely will, is easier to read.
I have a question on the postage. Do you have, I know we decided to not allow mail-in voting anymore. We're allowing the absentee vote, but not mail-in voting. And that was quite expensive to have the mail-in voting. Is there any, is this, it has the voter registration, but is the vote, is the postage for the town clerk, would that be in the town clerk's budget itself, not in this?
Right.
Because you've got some voter things here, but not that.
I think I saw it in town clerk.
Yeah,
Because she has a little
yeah,
footnote
yeah,
about the
yeah,
3,500 she thinks she's saving.
Yeah,
So it is in the town clerk.
Wayne, I just want to let you know that sharing it myself, it's a little easier for me to navigate, but so I can go to where Mary's talking about.
See it in the,
You're talking about the central purchasing, Mary?
yes,
I think it's on,
yeah, central, I'm on page 56, 55, excuse me.
And so your question, I'm sorry, Mary, is preoccupied pulling this up. Is there a change because of the number of mailings for the elections?
Yeah.
No, I did not change it, adjust it for that one way or the other.
Oh,
But what I do every year for all these accounts, let me take a step back and just, this isn't perfection, and every year we're gonna get better, so next year's details will be better. But this is almost like a zero-based budget approach. It's not true zero-based budgeting. But everything in this green that's a line is adds up to the line item in bold above it, right? So it's why we think we need, in the case of postage, $31,218.
Right.
Because we know these things are happening and we provide for them. And in this case, I have a provision for everything else of $9,000. And so we do go through that exercise kind of from scratch each year, not really from scratch, but updating the prior year estimates and thought and update it for the latest thinking. But then I also use that and compare that against what have we actually spent in our department
Prior
heads,
year.
actual, what they're thinking, matching up the reality of what we actually spent. So as you can see, on the postage, it's up and down overall spending year to year. But generally, we're spending about the 30,000 on average. That's where we arrived when we went through that exercise.
Mhm.
I have a question on the next page. On 56.
Okay.
For the town meeting costs. They looks like they're equal, 24, 25, and 26, but then shouldn't they going down once we're at the high school? Like we shouldn't have chair rental? There's like a line for four, I mean, I know it's small
Perhaps.
amounts, but we
Yeah.
can see a decrease once it's back at the high school this year.
But usually every year we have variable costs, so like we'll have custodial services again, where we wouldn't have that out on the field.
Outside.
So,
Yeah, so this it's a good pickup, Patty.
But it's
So
not an exact science.
It's,
not.
no.
it's not exorbitantly more than what we've been spending, but it is a bit more. So this would be an area where I need more money in postage next year, or one of these other accounts within this array of numbers under central purchasing is short. Basically, we pay for it by the savings here. And, in this case, it's been 3, so probably, maybe I could have done it this year. But definitely next year, you probably see a reallocation. So instead of asking for an increase in another line item, I'll increase that other line item and take it out of the savings here. And just a constant process of those adjustments year over year. Bottom line on the central purchasing, it did go up $6,700. So I guess one could argue, well, you didn't because you could have saved that $6,700 here. And maybe you're right. But it's $6,700. It all goes to my philosophy that we've talked about a lot of, it's not what you budget, it's what you spend. Doesn't mean we don't pay attention to budgeting, but we know we need to generate $1.2 million of free cash every year for our capital plan, at least. And so that has to come from somewhere. So I don't, budget down to the bone in that example, in that case.
I'm assuming we're expecting to have our next town meeting at the high school, inside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm counting on it.
yeah. Mhm.
I believe it's Cinco de Mayo.
It
Someone told me
is.
that.
We're hoping to have childcare and food.
And margaritas?
I was gonna
Band.
say tequila,
That would actually make it much more lively.
better have designated drivers too.
We've had the vans come and take people.
Hire me, I'll be a designated driver.
So I'll wrap this one up. So we've got lots to go over. So the bottom line on this is, if you go back to that summary page,
Mhm.
on administration budget summary, 693 in the prior year, the 725 just about. This is a 4.5% increase over the prior year. Most of which is salaries. The expenses are pretty nominal at 2%. Okay, go on to the next one, Mary.
The next one is, item C, it's the municipal finance, and it's pages 57 through 78. It was the next section.
Okay, this one's a big one. There's a lot of moving
Yeah.
parts to municipal finance and operations, or whatever you want to call it. We have a lot of salaries because this covers a lot of departments. So administration and finance is IT. It's our media operation. Devin and Wayne, they're working tonight. It's our finance office, which is accounting, assessing, treasurer collector. and it's our HR department as well. So we have a lot of employees involved in all of that. We'll focus on salaries first, and for that, I will go to the salary schedule. And you see the list of positions and the people in those positions. And luckily, we have not had much turnover this year. So they're similar. And so you see the percent increases. And the one big change is we've had some, we're very deliberative about how we onboard people in positions. And we've had some onboarding that had to happen in IT. So spending a lot of time on that. Mira was relatively new last year and through this year. And so we spent some time onboarding with that. And now feel like we have the capacity to perhaps onboard other position that was previously budgeted. But they're budgeted as 2 part-time positions, and we feel it's much more effective to bring it on as a full-time. So I combined, you'll notice at the bottom of the salary schedule, looking from 25 to 26 under the full-time, that there was a oh, I didn't put the amount in there. I just left it under a part-time. I'm sorry, misspoke. I thought I had done that. The 2 positions in FY25 that were part-time, that were vacant in the middle of the page here, we're contemplating making 1 full-time position equivalent to the total of those 2 part-time amounts. And that's for several reasons. Succession planning, for some retirements that we know are coming due, so we want to hire someone for that. It would also help accommodate us for the RTE. But absent the RTE, we were still going to recommend it because of succession planning. But just basically repurposing 2 part-time to a full-time position. The bottom of that page under temporary, we have 22,000. That's for internships. We've been very successful working with the Cape Cod Tech, getting interns. And we had 3 last year, which we turned into 1 becoming full-time in our IT tech position. And the other 2 got great experience and enabled them to get jobs off Cape. So we're very happy about that. And so we definitely want to continue that and support the tech. And it works for us too, so. So that means in total, at the end of that salary budget detail, going up from 1,456,000 to 1,529,000, a 5% increase in salaries. And I feel like, there's a misprint in here, or not misprint, but a miscalculation on my part. The FTE is staying the same. It shows going from 16.46 to 17.46. I added the combination of the part-time into a full-time twice. So there's no change in FTE.
Your staff is huge. It's growing.
The 1 person that we lost, Nolan, replaced by Chris, was that just found a better job, or?
We wanted to experience the city.
Oh, the city.
In
Oh,
Boston,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
That combined position was not filled in for FY25, right?
No,
Yeah.
had my hands full otherwise, so.
So that'll, and those budgeted amounts will go to free cash.
Yes.
They,
I had a question, Rich, on page 59, where I didn't understand under fiscal year 26, the last item under on that page, actually, media operations expense, where it was minus 60%.
Yep.
What, could you explain what, was something moved up to the
IT.
IT expense?
Yeah, the website. So let me just go through the rest of the detail. Mary will get to that question. I'm on the expense detail. for admin and finance expense. That totals, so my version doesn't have the page number, so I
Page
apologize.
65, I
For
think.
$12,025 is the total. Is that array, that's the admin and finance office budget. And this year or last year, really, this fiscal year and for next year, we take on the budget for maintenance of the 4 vehicles that we have for the town hall fleet. It's just easier to centrally manage it here, so we do that in lieu of the building department. We do have a need for some consulting. We need special audits or special requests from the DOR that we got to respond to, so sometimes we do that. And then training basically for our HR and me, essentially. Dues and memberships and training and seminars.
How many town hall vehicles do we have?
4.
4? Yeah, is that, but when you say that's the assessing, is that the assessing office or is that?
Well, assessing uses it, a building inspector uses it, or plumbing, gas, and electric
Oh, okay.
inspectors
So
use
we're-
it. Conservation
Different
uses it.
departments use the
And
4.
anyone else who needs to use a car to
Mhm.
do something.
Yeah, if somebody in another department has a seminar up in Falmouth,
They can
instead of
use-
paying mileage, we let them use the car.
Okay.
Moving on now to the town accountant expense accounts budget detail. So these are expense accounts of the accounting office. Not really a lot here other than travel and training and conference for the 2 people in the accounting office. The biggest expense here is compliance, audit and compliance, and those are contracts. And so we know what those contracts are, so we budget accordingly. And we'll still puff ourselves up when we get the chance. We do a good job and everything's straightforward and clean, and we get favorable contracts for audits because of that. And so, and this price is fixed for 5 years.
That's what I was just gonna ask. How many years is 5?
Yeah. Or maybe it's 4 years.
28,000?
Mm-hmm.
What does that note mean? Note 1 says 5-year service agreement.
Yep.
Why
So-
24, 28, $29, $30 and $30.
Yeah, it's 1,000.
Yeah, that's what I figured, but it's actually 28, right?
It says 28, but it means 28,000.
28,000.
28,000.
But FY 26 should be 28 and FY 27.
Yeah, I think maybe I didn't change the dates on that when I did that note. Moving on now to the treasure collector budget. This one's a little bit more complicated because there's a little bit more moving parts. One of the bigger things that we put through here, which is an unknown, it's almost like a legal budget for town manager's office. It's a legal budget for treasurers because you spend a lot of time with a tax title attorney when you have delinquents that you got to do follow up on, or you got to do tax liens or a foreclosure or any kind of tax litigation. So we provide $30,000. That is more than what we've spent. But this is a year that this fiscal year and continuing to next year, got notice for this fiscal year that the rates are going up. And so that's why we adjusted that accordingly. So we expect similar level of activity, but higher rates. So that, we're at average of about 15,000 or so that we spend is probably going to go up to about 25, just without any other change.
Do you use the same attorney for, no?
No.
Out-
They're different attorneys. So a couple of attorneys in Massachusetts that specialize in this. And so we utilize one of those folks separate from our outside counsel.
Yeah.
Professional technical is just all the costs associated with issuing and collecting bills. We also have a payroll service. We have third-party payroll. This provides us with some succession planning and sustainability, issues. And also, it's a good compliance check. We don't have to worry about compliance because they handle all the reporting to the IRS and W-2s and not 1099s, W-2s and payroll-related forms. And then time and attendance module we use for our time tracking. It has a licensing cost to it. That's included for $3,000. under this, we also include a lockbox service. So this is, occasionally you'll see somebody put on Facebook and, why am I sending my bills to, Malden or wherever it goes? Because we have a lockbox and they collect all our bills and process them electronically and send us a file so we can easily upload it. And it saves a lot of time and effort on our end that would otherwise be a manual process. So for relatively cheap money, that saves us a lot of labor. And again, it makes the office much more sustainable when you're outsourcing that work. When you have changeover, especially when it's really just a two-person office. When one person goes and you have a vacancy for any amount of time, it's problematic. So the rest of this is largely travel and conference and training, which proud to report that they've been taken advantage of. So both of our treasurer collector and assistant treasurer collector are participating in not only treasurer collector trainings, specific trainings, but also, and they go to, there's an annual and a semi-annual conference that they both go to, which is extremely helpful to stay up to date on what's happening, but also attending Suffolk University municipal training classes. So it's a great experience for them and for us. So overall, everything said on that budget went up from 64,000 to 65, about $1,000. Any questions on that? It's gonna keep rolling into assessing. Again, not a lot of changes here. Some of these things I think you'll recall talking about. In here, in the middle of the page, the $6,500 is the second year of using that near map service that Colleen, I think, updated you about last year. This is where we do the flyover and match that visual file against what we have on
What you've
record.
got
And that's
in
how we
records,
pick up
yeah.
some new growth. If somebody added a deck but didn't get a permit,
Yeah,
that's how we
yeah,
can find out. The top of this, the first array of numbers are basically licenses. We use a software. It costs about $13,000 a year. We have a contract for evaluation service and cyclical inspection service. What that means is, again, these are choices that we make. We could do these in-house, but we've got two people. And we have a requirement that every 10 years, we have a requirement to go and do what's called list and measure every single parcel in town. So a lot of towns get to year 7, 8, 9, and they realize they haven't really been doing what they needed to be doing the past 8 years, and there's a big scramble and then they hire it at the last minute to find some people, and they overpay to have extra people come in to get caught up for year 10. Our approach is we have a contract. That contract gives advice and provides valuation assistance to the assessor annually as of January 1, and assists in getting everything approved through the Department of Revenue early in the late spring, early summer. Again, it's a sustainability issue for our office, so we have a turnover of the assessor. We've got a vendor that can help support that process and somebody that can step up to move it through. But what they also do, in addition to that annual valuation support, is they'll do, I'm gonna forget the percentage. I think we do 11% of all townwide property a year. So by the time we get to year 9, we've done our 100%. So that's
How many houses do they actually, I know they don't have to allow the assessor to come in. I was wondering how often people do allow them in, or do we have any idea
I'm not sure.
how often that happens?
The rest of this budget is basically pretty nominal items, some supplies, again, travel and conference. And overall, the budget stayed exactly the same.
Same, yeah.
Trying to do a better job with the department heads under the comments to, put notes that link to each of these so you know exactly whether it's a contract, it's an ongoing thing, and any, what some of these things are doing. Okay, let's keep rolling here into IT. This one's a little convoluted and complicated, and I'm gonna have to go back sometime soon and actually make sure this is updated because it's constantly changing environment. But we made a ton of changes over the last years, and thank God we did because of all the challenges a lot of towns are facing. I'm really proud of what we've done with their IT department. I feel like we're in really good shape. What you see under professional and technical is one of the key reasons why. this MSP support, we have a person that comes in 2 times a month. He's an expert, he's a vendor, he has a company. And he's expert, IT person. And in lieu of having a high-end IT director that we might pay, I don't know, $150,000, $180,000, we get this guy 2 times a month, and he just it's $175 an hour, which is actually a really good rate for that level of professional. But we certainly use that full 16 hours to get the high-level expertise. So you're not asking him to deploy PCs for us. He's designing and our network infrastructure and our architecture, and that's what we rely on him for. And to give direction to the staff on things that they need to be doing. So between him and Sharice, our IT manager, they've done a great job of making sure we're on top of the things we need to be on top of.
So I have a question. If you're talking about the repairs and maintenance section, that's about the third one down there.
I didn't, but
Yeah.
Go
yeah,
ahead.
Yeah, so that you're showing on the actual for 24 is $32, and then it's increased. The budget was 7,005, actual 32, and then 7,005. So is that because of?
no, it's not because of anything. That's a good point. So that line item and the 15,000, just a few lines down,
Mhm.
those are two, this is what I was going to mention. In this budget, those are 2 spots that I would call a provision. So the repair and maintenance is because something might go wrong, we need to have some money to accommodate that. And the reason why it's so low is because we're doing such a good job, things aren't going wrong as much. But I still feel like we need to have a provision in case that there is a severe, you have a server that you're not expecting to crashes, you need something to fix it.
Well, FY 22, the actual was
Right.
almost $11,000.
And the other side of that is if something severe like that happens, we're probably gonna have to call in our MSP support guy extra to handle that, and that's what the 15,000 is. So those 2 lines are provisions for bad things might happen.
What I know, Jackie reported at the recent select board meeting that her email was hacked. What do you think caused, I mean, as you've discussed, we've spent quite a bit of time trying to make sure our IT is in pretty good shape here. What do you think caused that?
Phishing emails, it's so sophisticated nowadays.
And I think it's important to note, Mary, that it didn't actually enter the network. It only entered my email.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, so I think, that was probably more human error, something that I did because it came through my phone.
Mhm.
So they were not able to access our network. It just commanded my email.
Oh,
and
okay, and
sent it
sent out.
Yeah.
And so
Okay,
because of that, so it's a good example. That's an example of, Sharice is working hard to lock that down, change passwords. It's also a communication to Dan, our outside MSP support. He didn't charge us anything extra for it.
No, and they did a full
but what-
investigation.
And, so it's the value of having that. So, and they'll be, the next time he's here on site, I forget which week we're in now, but I'm sure that Dan will be going through with Sharice and Chris on making sure we've got a procedure and a process to lock these things down, and are we following it? So it's a good example of the value of having someone like an outside support.
yeah.
The next section is kind of the most expensive area of this whole thing is software licenses. It just continues to get more expensive and more expensive. And I think we're hitting the cusp of it. At this point, I think we're almost, if not totally done, just about done of transforming from what, I would call in the old days, a CapEx model to an OpEx model. Nobody sells you a disc anymore that you load and can use for the next 10 years on however many PCs you might happen to have. You got to buy a per seat, per PC, per person license, and you pay it per month. And so most software applications at this point have shifted to that. And why do they do it? Because they can charge more money. And so that's why you see increases here. And we've added a couple of things over the years to be a little bit more complete in our IT environment. like the backup and disaster recovery. It's not showing it's new here, but it's a relatively new thing.
Rich, are these all recurring? Like we'll see them again next year or anything? I
Yes.
know there's a footnote. Jackie, I know you mentioned one in your letter to the select board about your budget. One will repeat, but there's a footnote 2 that says the OpenGov software, the People GS is reduced this year and will be reduced further next year. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's much, but.
So a couple of things to your point. I'll start with footnote 1, which is the annual firewall licensing. So that's an example of, under the old way you used to purchase these things. You purchased the license when you purchased the units and it lasted you the life of the unit. And now they don't do that. So now that we got to replace these firewalls, which we have sufficient funds in our capital budget to do. Now they charge you an annual license fee. So I don't know the exact numbers, 5 or however many years, probably about 5 years ago when we did our last firewall. But part of the cost of that firewall when we bought that was probably about $30,000 to $40,000 of license support fees that just kind of amortized over the cost of, but now they don't do that. Now it's every year they charge you the fee.
So the maintenance fee is in that number?
Right. So now this is what we can expect for our annual licensing each month for each of our firewalls, of which we've got 3.
And are they cloud-based?
No, a firewall is an actual device that you got to manage, but they're managed remotely.
On-prem?
They're on-prem, but everything is able to be managed remotely
By your guys.
by our IT manager and by our MSP provider if we needed him to.
And how much of the software that we use is hosted versus on-prem? I mean, roughly.
Most of it. So our Munis software, our financial management system, is a hosted solution by
And
our
OpenGov is hosted.
OpenGov's hosted. People GIS is a mix,
No, I see you got Adobe Cloud down here too.
but we're phasing that out. So OpenGov, which we've added at the bottom of this list for 44,500, is the new item in addition to the firewalls. And that's purely hosted,
Right, and that's the annual maintenance,
annual license fee.
fee.
And
includes
so
maintenance.
that is going to replace People GIS, but it's an implementation process.
When I go in and get my fire permit, that city, is that what we're replacing?
No, City Hall Systems is basically a payment processor.
So does this government system do that too? So are we gonna go off one and stay on?
Well, City Hall Systems is used for different things than OpenGov is used for. OpenGov is basically permitting. City Hall Systems is used for
Well,
different
the fire
things.
permit is a permit, right? That's where I get the fire permit, it's the city hall system, right?
But right now we're focusing on conservation and health permits on OpenGov. And we're working currently on building. So
Does beach permits come in there too?
once we get those done, then we can evaluate what other
I'm
things.
sorry.
No, that's all good questions. But once we get the building inspections done, then we can look at other permits that might be another department. So beach, fire, police,
Right,
so it's a matter of migrating all these things,
is it gonna increase the license fee?
maybe. So that's part of what I got to evaluate. Is it worth bringing some things in on OpenGov or just leaving it the way it is if it's working effectively? But People GIS is a little rough and doesn't really do what we want it to do. So OpenGov is well worth, and everybody's loving it. It's just, the step of implementing it is a little timely. And but eventually, hopefully by next year, all but a very small amount of People GIS. We're still going to retain it for what it is, but there's one small thing that we do with it that it does well. It's going to cost us a couple $1,000s, so we're going to retain it for that. But hopefully the rest of that goes away and it'll be on OpenGov going forward.
But health is using it already now. We just implemented it for health for the short-term rental applications,
Yeah.
licensing applications, and it seems to be working really well for them. They like it a lot.
Good.
And Mary had already asked about the website, or maybe it was you, Patty, I forget. One of you asked about a reduction in media, and
Yeah.
so media went down $8,000 because last year, probably overthought it too much when we put the website in the media. But right now we're bringing it back and putting it that $8,000 cost. It's the same cost, but we're going to put it in the IT. So it looks like IT went up 8,000 more than it did, but it's coming out of media. We had some changes in our phone lines, which I have described as note 3. The net cost is only slightly more, but this is basically converting from a legacy system that was going to be discontinued, so we had no choice but to replace it. And we're implementing now actually a voice over IP system, which has a per phone per month cost. And so we got to calculate that and manage that. And so, me getting on with all our people that do this work is emphasizing to them, making sure we keep a good count of what we have and do we really need those things. And so it's a little bit of change in procedure on what some people are used to. But, like I said, as things change, try to be as specific as possible. So, for example, on the Nextiva voice over IP contract, you can see that we budgeted. We have a contract, we know the cost of $17 per month, and I budgeted for 115 units. So Shreese has to manage that. So if the police come up and say, hey, we need 10 more phones. Well, if we're at 115, now we're going to be over 10. So where's that money coming from? So those are the types of things we're able to do now as we put these details in the budget. Another thing that's new, it's not a lot of money, but I think it's worth mentioning and letting you know. Under Town Hall Internet, a Comcast line has been added for $2,500. Historically, we've only had Open Cape Internet. And so we felt it's important for our disaster recovery and the sustainability of operations to have a failover. If Open Cape goes down, what are we going to do? Well, now it's automatically programmed because our MSP was able to do this for us to fail over to automatically go over to the Comcast line so we don't lose any interruption in service at all. And what you likely will find, I don't know if it'll be the next year's budget, but some point soon, is we'll probably have a third failover that will tie in with emergency management, because both Open Cape and Comcast are fiber lines on poles. And if you have, the big one hits or a big explosion, if Open Cape fiber gets cut, chances are the Comcast fiber is going to get cut. And so the failover doesn't do you any good. So our third backup is an arrangement with a satellite provider. And we can looks like we can get that provisioned and set up for some relatively small implementation fee. And then we have it, and the monthly fee is nothing unless we use it. And we're only going to use it, if something bad happens, so then it would be worth having. So that'll be a future edition.
So the 200 per month for the town hall is that's going to be an ongoing
Yes.
cost.
The rest of this, some pretty big costs that they're operational. These are basically applications that we use. And again, big one being Office 365. Again, it's a per person per seat license cost per month. So we've budgeted for what we think we need, and that our IT people manage to that amount. If we have more than we need, we can cut it back and save some money. If we need more, we know we need to find where we're going to get the money from. Got to save money elsewhere to pick up for it. So all those changes, some big additions, we go from 310 to 389. And so that's the big increase on the
80,000.
in the municipal administration and finance budget is what really drives that up. And then real quickly, since we spent a lot of time on it, I'll just go to media services. Really no changes here, except that we did take out the website hosting. And we did drop our video on demand. We have it now, but we're going to discontinue it because Devin's done a great job and set up live streaming by YouTube and Zoom, which doesn't have a cost to us. So we're trying to adjust as we can and reduce costs. So I went from 28 to 11. And that's it.
Do you expect, just to back a minute, when you were talking about the IT going up 80,000 from last year to next fiscal year, do you anticipate that continuing to increase because of the technology, the tech aspect of everything these days?
It's going to increase more than the average rate of inflation,
Mm-hmm.
but we've been adding things each of the last 3 years. out of necessity to get our shop where we need it to be and our infrastructure where we need it to be. But as of this budget, I think we got everything we need. Now it's just management of maintaining it. So I would expect the increases to be less.
The cost.
The costs will go up,
Mhm,
but we're not, hopefully won't be adding anything new.
mhm.
I'm back in the summary page. It's on the screen here. And you can see salaries for the overall department are 5% increase. Nominal increases on the departments, operating departments, 25% increase on IT, 60% decrease on media, for a total overall increase of 11.71%. I mean, on the expenses, but overall, 6.83%. Probably the biggest of all of them, so. Been through a lot with this one.
I'm sorry?
This is probably the biggest of all the budgets that we have, so a
Yeah.
lot of moving parts to it.
Mhm.
Question, Rich, on page 63, the position control history.
Hmm.
Notice that from FY 21 to FY 26, so 5 years. Full-time equivalents have gone from 11.8 to 16. So, what's that, 40% more salaries, I guess, more staff.
Yeah, 4 more people. Let's see, I kind of forget how I went about doing this. I shaded things where things changed. So we added Mira, we added Rachel Nicholson.
Admin assistant.
We added in the IT shop an applications manager. That was a new one. Administrative assistant, applications manager,
HR director,
Mira.
right?
HR director, but that was more of a reclassification. See the year before, that's what that pink, I think, shade shows.
Mhm.
In 22, we had an admin assistant doing HR stuff.
Oh, the one below. Okay,
And
so
then
moved up.
when they had a chance to upgrade that, we upgraded it to a HR coordinator. And that person worked out fabulously, and we determined that, she can handle the higher level responsibilities, and not only can she, we ought to retain her to do that, because otherwise it'd be someone that would move on. And made that position HR director. So that's the progression of that. But it wasn't new position, it was just
Is
updating.
that Lori?
Lori.
Yeah.
Whereas you see the assistant finance director, initially we thought it was gonna be an assistant finance director. But that actually ended up being, that's coded yellow there in 23. What we ended up doing, and we talked about this back when this happened, is that ended up being an administrative assistant, Mira,
Mhm.
and a part-time finance coordinator ended up being the better solution when we got the applicants for different things. That was a better path to follow. So for the same, even though it's more positions, 1.7 versus 1, it's the same money on that. We didn't add money, we just repurposed the money we got in 23 to 2 spots, because that ended up working out.
I think you've pointed out before that these extra people help the town run more efficiently, so it's not, there's some savings generated by these
Absolutely.
extra salaries.
There is, and what it really does is it makes us a sustainable organization, and it prevents crisis. And when you're in thinly staffed towns, I would submit that you probably see more frequent turnover. And you see what you don't see, what's not getting done until it's a crisis.
Right.
And that bill, you never know, it takes years sometimes for that to raise its ugly head. But when it does, everyone says, well, what happened? Well, we want what happened this year or last year or 5 years ago when we should have been doing this, you know what I mean? So, and the answer is usually it's a multitude of years of things not getting done because it's just not the people to do it. So I think you'll find that we're staffed a little bit more than some other towns. but we also don't have the problems some other towns have. And I always pay attention to the job boards because that's my job to know what's going on and
Job what?
job boards of who's hiring and what they're hiring. And it's taken some time, but people are hiring assistant finance directors and finance coordinators. All these things that we've set up and have in place, you're starting to see more frequently, more often, because towns are realizing that, they're skating on thin ice in a lot of cases. Yeah, we could have done without a formal HR director, just done what we did, 4 years ago. Jackie would be pulling, and I would both be pulling our hair out because
That's what we did. We interviewed everybody. We did the,
She does the work of 3 people. When she gave that presentation over the summer, wasn't Lori here? She was Zoom. When she talked, I
She's done a
said,
great
how many
job.
people are on your staff?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, I couldn't believe
Yeah.
it was just her, so.
Right.
Can I ask a kind of general question?
Yep.
And you could do a really quick answer. I love that column. It's all over the place. It's in the full year 24 actual where you have budget spent percent. And just,
What page, Patty?
like, if you go to page 59, it's on a lot of the pages.
Page
If you go to
59?
59 to the far right where you have actuals, and it's only for full year 24. You have full year 24 actual, and then the next column is budget spent percent, and you kind of monitor at the very bottom, it's 91.21%. Kind of goes back to what you say, it doesn't matter what you budget, it matters what you spend. Do you do you sort of like trend that for all the departments or year over year? What about what we spend percent of our budget? Not that you want to depend on being under budget.
I don't know
but
that I pay that much attention to it anymore. But we have a town accountant that probably does.
Looks at it.
But we have spending controls in place, right? So we have a budget and our department heads are good about adhering to the budget. But just to be careful, just in case, anything over 5,000 requires a PO. That
Above
goes-
budget, yeah.
It
above-
goes between,
I mean, yeah, right, yeah.
goes to our procurement person, it goes to me, it goes to Jackie, so we're all aware. And they're not allowed to spend big slugs of money without getting that PO. And what we're gonna try to introduce this upcoming year, hopefully, is anything that we know, like it's a contract. We got an audit contract, we know how much it's gonna cost. Put that PO in at the beginning of the year. Because it's gonna come.
Yep.
And so what you've left, if you put in everything you know, and you got $100,000 budget and you got $70,000 worth of contracts, get them all in, and you got 30 grand to work with, or whatever it is you got to work with. And so this is a matter of monitoring and managing that instead of the bigger piece.
Yep. I mean, I saw I was looking at just a lot of 90%. So, staying under budget rather than over, I guess, is good.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm sure our department heads do. We don't have a history in the last several years of nubbing these budgets down to the bone. And that is I think is a big deal, because if you're in that situation, you've created bureaucracy and you're worried about pushing paper and moving money around to cover things that you need to. Just stop, in my opinion, let's not do that. Let's just give people what they think they need and a provision for if something bad happens where we can. If this budget was, 75% spent, that would be an indication that, maybe we ought to tamp this down,
Yeah,
right? But 90%, I don't consider 10%,
it's healthy.
exorbitant.
Yeah.
And in this case, a big part of that is, because we had 2 unfilled part-time positions. So if I added that, didn't account for that, we'd probably be closer to 100.
Mhm.
All right, Mary, I'm gonna keep rolling because we got a long night ahead of us.
Yep, yep. So,
It's
we're-
probably the longest of all your nights. I apologize.
yeah, yeah. So, let me see. We're on to the, let me see, the snow and ice, page 78,
No, that's,
where, what,
that
what,
got added in. I'm not sure why that's part of the admin and finance budget. Don't pay attention to it. We're on to town clerk.
oh, I just have a question on the snow and ice.
Mary, it's a meaningless page.
Oh,
It's not, shouldn't even be there.
Cross out my question.
It
later, when you. do
didn't factor into any of the
DPW.
numbers that we reviewed.
oh, okay,
don't-
okay, disregard.
It's in the snow and ice is in DPW budget. So when we get DPW, we'll go through snow and ice.
Okay. So the next thing is you see the town clerk, 80 to 86, which is right after what we were just on.
Yep, and I got it on the screen here.
Let me get my
Um,
notes.
Here's the summary. You can see the big only change here is from salaries from 184,398 last year to 192,862. They've got an expense budget of 18,820, which hasn't changed. So a total increase of, well, I missed a percentage there on the expense. Oh, no, it's 0. That's why it didn't change. Overall change is 4.16%. If you go into the detail of the salaries, the office has 2 full-time people and 1 part-time person. And our clerk is elected, so she's not on a salary schedule. But annually, we review her wage and what our surrounding clerks get and keep it competitive. The other 2 people are on a salary schedule for our Eastham Employee Association, so they have a step and a grade.
That's Kendra and
Rachel.
Rachel.
Just a quick question about the town clerk. How often is the town clerk elected? What's the term of office?
3 years.
Okay, so was she just elected? Like,
No, well, no,
Yes,
couple years.
I'm not
year.
sure.
Last year.
Last year? Oh, geez.
Last
so
year.
next year we will have another election if someone chooses to run.
Well, we have an election every year, but for town clerk
Be
specifically,
every
Yeah.
3 years.
yeah,
Okay,
perhaps.
yeah. That question came up on another committee. Sorry.
So this would be, if, I believe she was elected last year, so this would be their first fiscal year, so it would be 2 more,
2 more.
years before she would be running again.
So FY 27 or 28. Okay.
25, 26, she'd be running in 20, in
Seven.
fiscal year 27 for
Yeah,
fiscal year 28.
26. Okay.
Yeah,
Not any change at all in their expense budgets, and I don't want to take a lot of time going through it, but it's basically supplies and preservation type costs, election costs for our tabulators and things like that. But she does a good job out breaking down what she needs and putting the descriptions in here and why she needs it. And if you look at the expending against that, you see that it's pretty spot on.
Jump up from 24 to 25 budget, and that was the extra assistant, I guess.
Yes.
Rich, what is election coding? That's the tabulators? That,
Yep. Poll pads that they use. Those are like the iPads type of thing.
They're like iPads when we do the check-ins,
Check-in.
because I actually do that when
Check-in.
we're checking the voters.
And then the tabulators actually, what counts the ballots.
so you just have a figure for that for this year and next year, nothing prior to that.
Yeah, probably because we didn't break it out separately.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay.
every year we have
It
to,
it was somewhere, it just wasn't
Probably.
shown separately like some of the other expenses.
and the poll pads are new, relatively
Yeah, I
new.
was gonna say that, because it used to be when you checked in, it was like pieces,
Paperless.
sheets of, they go through paper.
Paper.
Now it's an
Mhm.
and now it's an iPad. I think that's just a few years. I can't speak for the tabulator, it's just the poll pads.
And the animal licensing, that went from 3,600 to 500?
Yeah, it went down.
I'm not,
So this is an example of using City Hall systems that we already had it for the treasurer collector's office to accept online payments.
mhm,
We were able to expand that for cheap money
mhm.
to the clerk.
Is that the OpenGov thing that you're,
No, City Hall systems.
I'm sorry?
City Hall systems, a
Oh,
different
oh,
application.
City Hall, oh, that's a different system.
The one I talked about with the fire permits,
For the fire? Oh, okay.
you get fire permits and forget what else.
Well, and the treasurer comes in to give you guys an update over the summer. You can ask her. She knows all the details.
You find out when you go to buy it.
All right, Mary, I'm gonna keep rolling, so we got a couple more to go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go now to unallocated.
So I'm sorry, I just have another question. Under office supplies,
Mhm.
that hasn't changed, and we were talking earlier about the mail-in not allowing the mail-in voting. So shouldn't that figure be reduced for office supplies?
I don't think so. I don't know that we ever increased the budget in the first place for the mail-in voting.
So we went over budget?
Well, the note talks about it.
There's a note on the next page, yeah, that
Yeah.
maybe sounds like they foot the bill that that they only budgeted 3,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state supplements. So sometimes the clerk, she does get election monies, it's by law, we have to keep separate. And for the early voting and mail-in voting, and I forget the years for it, but the state picked up the tab for some of the first years during COVID. So,
Maybe during COVID, because that's when they started a lot of the
right.
mail-in.
A lot
so
of
maybe we
people
got something
use
from the
mail-in
state.
because of COVID.
But we didn't increase the budgets then because the state picked up the tab or we got money back.
Oh, I see. So you're just showing what it would have been without it and what it's going to continue to be without it.
All right. Appreciate you guys hanging in there. Like I said, this is the longest night for you. The other departments are easy.
So are we finished with the,
Moving to unallocated.
that's 80 to 86. So
Yes.
now we're down to unallocated, that's 185 to 194.
I've got the summary on the screen and you see the unallocated budget is things that we don't allocate to specific departments that we handle on a central basis. Energies and fuels, liability insurance, pensions, employee health insurance, and other employment costs. I'm going to point out a couple here at the summary page. So when we get to the detail, you can see it. You notice that general liability expense did not go up. I am projecting that it's going to go up. But that's an area, and in an effort to make sure we come in under budget within our levy limit, I intentionally did not go up on this budget, knowing that if you look at the actual section here, FY24 actual 447, that FY24 budget 527, right about an 85% spending level. So I'm eating into some of that surplus generated on that line essentially by not increasing the budget, even though I am expecting probably a 5% increase.
Do you buy that every year?
Do I what?
You go out and buy it every year, or do you have,
General liability insurance?
yeah?
No, we don't bid it every year. We purchase through what's local group, statewide group called Maya, Mass Interlocal Insurance Association.
Okay.
But it's something we could put out to bid. But I just feel like we get pretty good value with it. The other thing I could do if I thought we were gonna run into problems there, and we couldn't absorb the increase without the budget going up. I do want to evaluate probably for next year, do we really need the deductible levels we have? So I gotta do a little analysis of that. So we have some ability to make some changes. And we do get credits for different things that we do during the fiscal year. And whatever credits we get for this year, I'm gonna bank to help for the next year's budget. So I think we'll be fine by not having an increase in general insurance. Employee insurance is a similar discussion. You know, you see 24 budget to 24 spent is again about 85%. I do expect health insurance to go up about 7% this year. We'll know in another month. We'll have a better idea on that. So I only went up about half of what I thought we need, and I'm gonna, utilize some of that budgetary savings to offset increases that we don't otherwise need. So as an example of, as you're saying earlier, Patty, looking at the actuals as the percent spent on the budget, if it gets too out of whack, I will adjust and try to catch up. That being said, that is going to reduce our free cash because we had pretty, remember our year-end presentation, the biggest return of savings from any budget item for the last several years is always health insurance, which is typical because it's probably one of the most things that could fluctuate. Roy, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Why the decrease in employee pension expenses?
I don't know yet.
Okay,
That's the truthful answer. It was a shock.
Write that down,
A shock to me. We get actuarial evaluations done every other year, so maybe it was an adjustment related to something of that. But I gotta get a call into the County Retirement Association and ask them to explain it, some of the details that I see in the calculation. But that's the letter they sent us. I'm taking it.
Yeah, hope the good news continues.
Right.
But normally that would be, I don't know what. It's a couple $100,000 increase year over year, 100 to 200 depending on stuff.
Right.
So I have a similar question. In fiscal year 24, actual was 2.9 for the employee insurance expense, and now it's $1 million more in 2 years.
That's probably one of our fastest growing line items.
Mm.
If we get a 7% increase this year, that's actually probably doing pretty good. Most state GIC, I think, is looking at 11s. The national trend is 10 to 12.
Mm.
And what's really driving that is prescription drug costs.
Yeah.
Particularly these weight loss drugs, Wegovy and Ozempic.
Mm.
Very expensive. And at this point, most insurers have not limited it.
Mm.
And I suspect that's probably going to happen because it's been killing all the insurance companies. We don't have an insurance company per se. We're self-insured.
Right, self-insured, right.
And so we, as a regional group of people that manage this, have the ability to set our plan designs. For something new like weight loss drugs, we get to make the decision. And once we make it, everybody has to kind of live with it. But if it's not new and you want to change it down the road, well, that changes plan design, that changes benefits, that is subject to negotiation. So there's complexities to some of this stuff. So you can't necessarily just change your plan design at whim and say, oh, we no longer want to do X, Y, and Z, and therefore we saved a point or two on our health insurance, because then your collective bargaining units are going to say, wait, that's a change in the benefits that we had.
And Rich, just so I'm a member of a group, I'm a former benefits director, and I'm hearing in other parts of the country, stuff is going up 18%.
Yeah.
So it's
No, we have
crazy.
we have a great, people complain about it because someone's always going to complain. And in any, it's insurance. And I've been in this self-insured health group stuff. I helped create the very first one in the state long time ago, the early 90s.
When he was 12.
And I'm still doing it. So, and what you'll get is, especially in a big group, these people, it's almost like the electric rates that you get, these enticing offers from these, people that you have no idea where they're coming from. Say, hey, let me look at, your costs or your health insurance. Give me your data on your employees. And it turns out that, hey, your costs have only been going up 5% a year, but your group's rates are going up 8% a year. You're subsidizing them. Okay. For those 3 years you did. But that's what insurance is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pay in so that when you have a big hit, you're not
They have the money.
suffering all on your own. Well, what would you do if you took that analysis and looked at it out over 9 years? I guarantee you'd find at least one, if not 2 or 3 of those 9 years, you're going to have somebody that had a bad incident, whether it's a cancer or a pregnancy related thing or a crash, and they have a high cost claim. 10% of the claimants of our health group drive like 80% of our costs.
Mhm.
So if you don't have a high cost claim in a year, of course it's going to look like you're subsidizing the rest of the group. But find the years where you had the high cost claims, and then you're going to be higher than the rest of the group. And so you got to expand that 3-year look to a 10-year, 9 or
Larger.
10-year look.
Yeah, over a longer period of time.
Over time, all these towns have done really well by the health group, and I think. And we have a pretty robust wellness program, which is one of those things that's a little questionable. It's hard to equate that to savings, but we feel inherently that it has huge savings at the level of spending that we do on our wellness. And a lot of our employees take advantage of it, whether it's yoga or walking groups. And we also have our international drug purchasing program. So if you can buy a drug from Canada, that's at a fraction of the cost of buying it locally at the retail pharmacy. We try to align people up for that. And we have a very robust plan. So one of the reasons I'm not going up too much and a lot of that savings you see is we did implement HSA plans. and we have some pretty good, first year, I think we got 8, and then we got 16, and I think we're up over 20 something now. I forget what the numbers are. But every person that shifts to that plan, if it's appropriate for them, but it's a significant savings to them, and it's a 20% savings to us on a monthly cost for our health insurance. So we've been actively working that for the last couple of years. So that's why I feel pretty good about it. Again, it will cut into our overall level of free cash that we get at the end of the year.
And I have another question on the item below where we had an actual of 26,000 in fiscal year 24, and we're up to 112 for the budget.
Yep, so let's go to that specific page. Well, as I go through, let me just go through from the top, I guess. Here's the page on energy and fuels. I need to do a better job on this, I feel myself, but Mira has been working pretty hard on keeping data that allows us to measure kilowatt hours. So I'm going to continue to hopefully perfect that. Gasoline. Geez, I didn't put anything in there, but we had a lot of detail on that. Maybe it's under my notes. Oh yeah, I put a lot of notes down here at the bottom. That's what I did. Because we do manage this budget as much as we can. So we have natural gas contracts, we have electric supplier contracts, and so we know what those are. And so now it's just a matter of managing consumption and budgeting for the consumption. So that's what we're trying to do. And that's what all the notes down here kind of indicate. No, it's not only for you to know and to, evaluate that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but it's also continuity. Something ever happens to me, I want people to know why we did what we did. And so I'm trying to leave notes, and if anybody could take this over. Here's the liability insurance page and the breakdown by policy type. Here is the pension page and insurance page. On the insurance, just another thing to point out, and this is also a cost savings to us, is something that's relatively new. I have health insurance by active, dental, and retiree plans, MedX. Then the old Tri-Town plan, I've got to start budgeting for. Been neglected to do that. But we also have a health insurance opt-out program that we're now showing separately as part of the budget.
Yep.
And so that's been pretty effective. You can see 3 years prior on the actuals, we only were spending 16 grand on that, then 70 grand, and now 96 grand. And so it's costing us money to pay for the opt-out. It's costing us $5,000 per person for a family plan, but it's saving us the cost of a family plan, which is probably, 20 grand. So that's another program in addition to the HSA plans that's helping us this budget line to be successful.
So I have some questions back to the electricity. It's on page 189, and it just seems to me that the police station is 23,000. The fire station is 16. You would think that some of the buildings should be similar in amounts, and they don't seem to be.
Yeah, you notice that they're the same for the 3 years. And this is what I'm talking about, is I'm trying to develop a system using the data that Mira is now capturing to get a better handle on that. And so I wouldn't put a lot of faith in that. You know, it's the vast amount of that is just an unallocated.
Yeah, right, just 45% of the
that I
total.
don't know where it's going. So I'm basically budgeting for this year, the total kilowatt hours based on the rates that we know we're gonna have. I haven't broken it down by building yet. I don't know how, when I first started and this was in here, I don't know how they actually got that data, because as far as I knew, it doesn't exist. That's why Mira is helping me create it. But
So we should the electricity is 193. Let's just leave it at that, you were saying.
and I have my notes down below, it's saying why, I think it should.
Yeah. Okay.
Is the property insurance in here?
I was gonna ask that question too. I
Yep,
didn't
it's
find
on
it.
the insurance page.
Property protection liability, is that the proper,
Where is that?
page 192?
Oh, I see. 192.
Yeah, it's 145 grand.
That's property insurance. Did the insurance cover the library roof?
That's my question.
But it covered the town hall.
I know.
Yes,
Why?
Can we talk about it at some other time?
Okay, okay. Well, it's a big concern of mine.
I'm finally getting to your question, Mary, that you asked on the employment cost detail page, 112,000. So that's the biggest thing that's comprised of is the salary adjustment account, 70,000. So that's a provision. It's not necessarily something we need, and if we needed to cut something, that's something probably we would look at. If we have to make this balance, we need a few bucks somewhere, that's probably where I'd look. That gives Jackie the flexibility. For example, we budget X amount of dollars in the police department for a patrol officer. We got a great candidate because they want to come from another department, but they want to be held harmless for what they're making there to what they're going to make here. We can't start that person at step one. And they're experienced and they've been to the academy, you don't have to have any, we want to hire that person. So if the police department's budgeting 75 grand, but this person's going to cost us 100 grand, we're going to do that. And we're going to make a transfer of that salary adjustment account to cover that extra. Or we have an HR coordinator that really needs to be an HR director, and we got to make that classification in the middle of a year. We're going to use that account to make that adjustment. So that's what Jackie uses to make classifications that have to happen or ought to happen in the course of a year. So we're not hamstrung. Have some flexibility to do what we ought to do when the opportunity arises.
The employment cost expense line.
Salary adjustment account, the 70,000. 70,000 is part of the 112.
Oh, okay.
25,000 is for employee physicals because we're doing hiring all the time. 2,000 for uniforms, which is t-shirts basically. And then a townwide training fund, which has been utilized the last couple of years at 15,000. So, might be money that necessarily you don't need to appropriate, but I think the training that we provide is, far outweighs the cost to us over the long term. So that's where we provide some money for training outside what the departments might have. The departments have in their budgets for training is usually specific to that department. You're the town accountant, you go to the town accountant school. You're the treasurer, you go to the treasurer school. You're the assessor, you go to the assessor school. Well, what if you want to go to Suffolk University for a governance course? That's not in your budget, but Jackie's got the money to send you to that.
On the gasoline, it's my understanding that we've had some sort of agreement or contract on that too for a period of time. And I see on here, you don't have a figure down here. Where are we on that contract?
Gasoline? I've got notes here on gasoline.
Natural gas.
It's natural gas, then
I
it
see
goes,
that.
the
Diesel
next
and gas.
page, diesel and gas.
Diesel and gas. Is that,
Sure.
Page 191.
is that?
Those are all
di-
gas,
di-
right?
Is that,
Yeah.
that's diesel?
But then there's another one.
And
estimated
gas.
30
Diesel and gas.
Actually, is the diesel and gas the same? I mean, you're talking about diesel and, okay, it's all the same thing. We have a contract diesel and a contract gas or?
Yep, it's a county bid.
Okay,
It's an
okay.
annual bid.
Alrighty. And how long do we usually have those? Are those for 5 years or? 3
Annual
years?
bids,
I'm sorry?
annual bids.
Oh,
Such one of those things that fluctuates so much that no one's really
that
gonna
no
bid.
one won't give you anything more than just an annual. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna keep moving along. We got one more to go. Thanks for hanging in there. I got good news on this one too. This is the debt budget.
Don't brag too loud, so you never know.
Yeah, it's great news until something changes.
Exactly.
So, here's a summary page on the screen. And you see the first line, the biggest line is exempt debt, 8,465,000.
Is this 190, page 196?
7. 7?
197.
197, yeah. Yep.
So back to the discussion at the beginning of the meeting. We get to have our operating budget funded by our tax levy, and it's got to fit within what we're allowed to spend. We don't count that 8,465,000 in that calculation. whatever that debt for that exempt debt is, gets added to what we're allowed to raise. Non-exempt debt isn't exempt, so it is in the calculation of what we gotta come in under. But that's not as much. And capital lease payments also have to come in what we have to get under, and our costs as well. Capital lease payments are all fire department related. It's for the ambulances and our Quint fire truck, our ladder truck. And that's funded entirely by our ambulance fund. So we have a transfer, one of our funding sources in our whole budget compilation is a transfer from the ambulance fund of 301,000 into our general fund to cover those costs. So it's not part of our tax levy. It's not funded by the tax levy. And then the detail pages, it's probably easier to look on the screen here. This is the detail of the exempt debt. This shows every single bond issue, what it was for, and how I arrive at that 8,465,000. And then you notice at the bottom here, this is the newer stuff that's going on. It's highlighted gray. So the good news is related to what I call file 23, this water bond phase 2E for 639. Well, I just got an email last week from the state revolving loan fund, and they've adjusted our debt service schedule.
Excellent.
And so instead of 639, that's going to be $569.
Wow.
70,000.
I also have to budget for things that might happen that will come due in FY 26. And so here's my calculation if we bond out the remainder of the water bond. Hopefully with USDA, because if we do it through USDA, we'll get a very favorable rate, but not only will we get a favorable rate, we will also get a favorable term of 40 years instead of 30 years. And so I'm hoping that we can get that done. And if we can't get it done through USDA, I'm not sure what I'll do, but maybe we'll borrow a lower amount at a higher cost so we can live within that 600,000, or I'll make some other adjustment to accommodate for it.
The 600,000, assuming the 40 years and the 2.5% rate.
Yeah, that's basically that calculation, 12 million.
Mhm.
The other thing that'll happen through the USDA, and I can't assume it, so I can't reflect it here, but we would likely get some debt forgiveness associated with that. And so that would be pretty awesome too.
So that 12 million is the residual amount that we have now? On the water?
It's what's left to bond on the water project.
Oh. That needs to be bonded. So we're gonna bond it through you. Is USDA faster now than it used to be?
No,
No.
heavens no, but we applied 2 years ago, so we're hoping.
Well, I'm
That's
glad things
pretty
didn't
fast.
change.
That's pretty fast, right?
Thought it was faster
We're on
than
the
before.
fast track. It should come through this.
Hip, hip, hooray.
On the track.
You think I meant that as a joke, but I really didn't. It was really
No,
true.
well, I remember
As
how
Fred
long it used to
knows,
take us
yeah.
to get the USDA money. It was nice to have.
I think
but-
there's one person left sitting in the USDA who's doing the loans.
I think they were just fired.
Yes.
today, so.
We might not be sitting.
Yeah,
But the 12 million is what we have left to bond.
It's not
on
the exact
entire
number, but-
Project. pretty much.
roughly, yeah.
And if we can get it at 2.5, that would be
That's
nice.
pretty good, yeah. 0 would be nice.
We can get
Yeah,
it.
well,
Well, if you get debt forgiveness, even though you're paying a rate, it's probably is 0 or something less. so.
And what's our total debt forgiveness so far? It's a big number.
It was a big number. Well, we've gotten it in chunks, but I don't know if have you
What's
kept
that?
track of it, debt forgiveness overall?
Yeah, I had the number.
We had it one time.
I can't
yeah.
remember what it
It's a
is.
good number.
It is a good
Probably
number.
like 13, 14 million.
Yeah,
We should put that in
Wow.
in the annual report.
yeah.
Hmm.
Write that down, because
Here's the
You run the
detail.
budget and you get the debt forgiveness.
Here's the detail of our non-exempt debt. So you can see in here an old septic loan, the town center plaza. That's being funded by short-term rental receipts. The rest of short-term rental receipts is the contribution towards the wastewater planning debt, which is exempt. And then also the Beach Plum Motel, but you see I'm backing it out right below that, because that's funded from the family support package appropriation. So we raise money in the family support package. I don't want to double it up here.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a creative,
It's coming
accounting.
out of the 495.
Right. And then here are our leases, again, ambulances and our Quint. And then I gotta provide some amount of money every year for bond issuance costs. We've been very lucky. If I don't need to use it, while you see the actuals aren't very high, it's because we've been very lucky. When you go out to bond, if somebody was willing to pay you a bond premium, you can use those premium proceeds to pay issuance costs. And then you use whatever's left after that to reduce your interest costs. But who knows what an environment might be? Maybe we can't get premiums, so. Gonna have to have something.
Rich, on page 201, you were talking about the leases. The last item is the ambulance lease, and it says that you've got it down for 68,520 for year 2. Shouldn't there be something under fiscal year 25 for year 1?
Yeah, but it wasn't in the operating budget. It was a separate article of the capital budget in the first year,
Okay, so it was paid, but not from
not from
in
operating.
this manner.
Right.
Okay.
All right. A whirlwind night.
Yeah.
Figure we got the hard night up front, so you can just coast the rest of the way.
Actually, I have another question. You have the interest on the Town Center Plaza. I'm looking at fiscal on the right-hand side. I'm on page 200. Fiscal year 2026 details of Town Center Plaza. You've got the interest, which is 123,000 on a principal of 150.
It's not on principal of 150 is the principal payment. It's on probably like $2.3 million.
Oh, so that's not the interest.
It's not the balance.
Oh, okay.
No.
Because I'm thinking that's an awful lot of interest, and that didn't make sense to me. Okay.
I guess the final thing I say to wrap all of this up, and I don't have it to show you on the screen, but all these things that you just looked at are in this article, operating budget, Article 2A table. So if you looked at the line items on each of these tables, they correspond to all these details of these individual books that we just
What
looked at.
page are you?
I'm not on a page.
Oh, you're not on a page.
I'm freewheeling, Mary. Sorry. Going rogue. It's at the front of your book.
We'll allow you to go rogue on occasion.
But is it,
Page 20, is it?
yeah,
maybe-
it's the front of your book, though.
Oh,
Maybe page 20 of the operating budget.
Was that Patty? She's always on top of
I'm
it.
always counting the pages.
Yeah. Thank you, Patty.
I know you probably could have figured that out, but I just thought I'd point out that all these details
Article
roll up
2A, I didn't know.
for this summary, right? That, this is what goes to town meeting.
Yeah, Article 2A. Okay,
And so we've just reviewed the details of all these lines that go to town meeting.
yeah.
But they can see all this on the website.
If someone so chooses,
When I tell people.
better check the stats. We're probably up to about 1,000 viewers now, I think.
You're kidding, really?
No, I'm kidding.
He always gets very sad.
It's the talk of the town.
Well, think about doing all this work and having nobody.
Nobody look at,
Hard.
until they
Well,
have
they
to. pay their
certainly have a
taxes.
lot to say about the tax exemption on the Facebook page, and I'm being moderated.
All right, Mary, we're getting late, so I'm gonna stop it there, and if you want to go on to the next rest of the agenda, we can maybe abbreviate any comments we got on those items.
Let me see, the agenda has new business and we've got nothing on there, so I'm going to pass it by. The next item is the old business, and the item that I was really wanted to spend most of my time on was the item D, which was the RTE, which we spent quite a bit of time on.
I guess I can update each of those real quick.
Yeah.
Capital Projects Committee, I think we'll probably wait to another time,
Right.
but we do need to spend time on wastewater as if we're gonna have an article at town meeting. And we had a Capital Projects Committee meeting, they were starting to get into those details. And by March 1, we're supposed to have something a little more affirmative to work with, so to be determined, I think.
Mhm.
Dispatch, there's nothing we're gonna be able to do with dispatch for this year. We tried, but we'll keep trying.
But did you get a grant for,
Yep, it's not gonna happen
because,
because the other towns won't participate.
oh,
So,
that's sad.
and the school study, I don't think has gotten moved too far along yet.
The RFP is getting approved and is ready to go out. That's about it.
Draft agreement, not too much updates from the
Mm-mm.
previous. Peter has been appointed to that, so we have a representative on that. The RTE we talked about. The only other thing I really want to talk about on this is CPA 3% surcharge exemption for low income exemption.
Mhm.
The CPC's recommended that to the select board, which I communicated at the budget hearing.
All right.
But if we're gonna do the RTE, and I already mentioned this to Mary, we might ask you to hold off on looking for that exemption. Cause last thing we're gonna need, if we're gonna do 2,500 applications for RTE is another, 40 or 50 for low income exemptions at the same time.
I'll bring it to the CPA committee.
So
Great.
we'll determine what we're gonna, so the select board and CPC will determine as we move forward, what we're gonna do with that for a town meeting article.
And I have a question on the community fund. Are donations tax deductible?
Yes,
Okay, somebody asked me that question.
I don't have any updates other than all the stuff I told you tonight. Jackie doesn't. have it.
And I had on the transfer fee, that came up at the select board meeting the other day, and I know some people are a little upset that the state didn't pass it, the transfer fee.
Mhm.
That's, when you pay if you're over $1 million, I guess there's an amount that could be more than $1 million. It's my understanding that there are some towns that are putting together what are they calling it? A home rule petition
It's-
Special
to try to pass it.
Couple
it-
towns have already.
Yeah, I understand Provincetown has and maybe
Nantucket.
Truro, maybe Nantucket, I'm not sure.
No, Truro doesn't. Nantucket and Truro, Newtown
Nantucket
have
and
it,
Provincetown.
probably the two, and it's Concord or something like that. It's a
Mhm.
couple that have it. I wouldn't imagine we're gonna try that this year.
Yeah,
Let's see how that shakes out with another effort.
you're not going to try it or you are going to try it?
Probably not try it for this year
Oh, okay.
and see how it shakes out at the regional or state level first. Because there's reasons it didn't pass
Mhm.
and the reasons apply individually. So why fight that battle alone?
Mhm.
And there's other things I would probably be looking for, like most of the reasons that people do this is for affordable housing. In my opinion, I'd like it also to be optional. You can, the local community can choose. If you want it for housing, great, but maybe you could also use it for wastewater, because that'd be another funding source to pay for wastewater. And as everybody knows, wastewater directly impacts housing. So
Mhm. Well, I would agree.
that's where that stands.
Yep. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up, ask about under old business? Do you want to make some comments on town manager?
I don't really have anything fresh from the meeting, but you
I
can
have
ask
something
questions.
exciting for you.
Okay, good. I
Effie
think.
Gardens are getting water.
What?
The our Effie
Oh,
garden
yes,
is.
yes.
Water. We got hoses, we got water
Yes.
spigots.
That
this
is
week.
exciting. I saw that as a very positive Facebook post.
We're a team captain of Hay Road, my husband and I, and we got water this week.
It's really good, isn't
This,
it?
people are really excited. It's
Yeah.
gonna really help.
Yeah, and
Does
this is
everybody know what Effie stands for? I think it's so
He's-
great.
East Ham
Ham-
Fabulous, Fabulous or
Famous.
Flower Island.
Islands,
Yeah.
yeah.
Flower Islands, yeah.
And this is the last year of the water system, so, it's quite amazing that we reached our 10-year mark. It seems like yesterday, doesn't it, Fred?
So to me, it does. Know that I'm 10 years older.
That we started.
Well, everybody thanks you because it makes a big difference to have
Yeah,
water.
it is.
at the
Yeah.
garden.
Well, we love those islands. Those are, they make our town so special, and I think we have some visual problems in places, and those islands are awesome.
Yep.
Softens
Right?
everything.
It does. It really does.
People, when we're there, the cars all stop and thank us and
Mhm.
love it, and so.
Okay, I have a couple of things, at the contract with the seashore, speaking of water, contract 21 with the problem with the seashore
Yeah.
folks, what's the status of that?
We don't know. I have had on my calendar, actually, we need to set up a meeting with Jackie Tepper and Environmental Partners Group to talk about what that might look like and how much money we, out of the 12 million that's left, that we need to set aside for that perhaps. But we have not done that yet, and partially it's because we're pedal to the metal on wastewater right now, and so we just haven't wanted to go back and revisit that. But we need to close out water this spring sometime,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we'll definitely have an answer by the spring of what the plan could be.
Okay.
There are a lot of parts of the park that we're not going to be able to go to for other reasons, like archaeological issues too, so.
The EV stations, I know they're not available, the two here and the two at the library. Is somebody getting some sort of signage to?
I think Mira has.
They have signs.
I didn't see anything at the library, so
They're right on the station.
they're right on the thing? Oh, okay, because I think people aren't parking there, thinking that they can't park there if they aren't using it, so that was leaving 4 spaces that weren't being used. So if there's signage there, because I brought it up earlier this week and there wasn't anything there. And the 2 bus shelters. The RTA said they were going to have the money and they were going to put them in, and I've asked about it several times, and we own the land up here at the Town Center Plaza where there's space perhaps for one. I'm thinking in the weather like this. I don't understand why the RTA isn't doing something, since they said they had the money and they were all set.
I don't have the answer to that. Every once in a while we call. One of the things that they were telling us is that they had to talk to the owner
Oh,
across
with
the
the super
street,
rep.
but the Patels are pretty easy to reach, so I don't know why that hasn't happened. And in terms of Town Center Plaza, I do think it would be good to have a shelter there, but where we are talking about Route 6 and developing that parcel, now might not be the perfect time to put up a bus shelter in a spot where.
When something was to change with Route 6. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's just no place for those people to wait, and the weather like this and we're trying to get people to use that type of facility versus cars, so it drives me crazy. Okay, that's it for me. Anything else from anybody else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Jump on that one.
Roy is asking to adjourn, and do I have a second? I'll call Patty. Yeah. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of adjourning? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And it is